So, a huge shakeup is coming to the UK's National Health Service. We're talking about a £1 billion plan that's all about redirecting money to frontline care. But to do that, it's making some pretty massive changes to how the whole organization is run. So, let's break down what's really going on here. At the very heart of this plan is one big, stark number: 18,000. That's how many administrative and managerial jobs the government is planning to cut from the NHS. Okay, so a number that big, it immediately brings up two massive questions, which are exactly what we're going to unpack. First, why is a change on this scale happening right now? And maybe even more important, how on earth is all of this going to be paid for? Right, let's start with the why. This first part is all about the government's official rationale, and it's being presented as a pretty straightforward plan to slash bureaucracy. The government has a very specific target, and they've given it a name: unnecessary bureaucracy. Now, that term is a direct reference to those 18,000 admin and manager roles that are spread across NHS England, the Department of Health, and all the local health boards. And here is the core financial trade-off. It's a spend money to make money kind of deal. The government is proposing a £1 billion one-time bill to cover the redundancies. But the long-term prize, the big goal, is to then save £1 billion every single year, money they say can be plowed back into frontline patient services, freeing up cash for more operations. And to really drive this point home, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has been very clear in his messaging. He said, quote, "I want to reassure taxpayers that every penny they are being asked to pay will be spent wisely." It's a statement that's clearly designed to build public trust in what is, let's face it, a very expensive plan. Okay, so that's the why. But the how, how they're going to find the cash for this, that's where this whole story gets really fascinating. So now we're going to look at the very unique funding solution that's supposed to make this all possible. Because here's the kicker: the Treasury has not given the green light for any new funding to pay for these job cuts. So if they're not just writing a fresh check for £1 billion, where in the world is this money coming from? All right, here's how this rather creative financial juggling act works, step by step. First, the NHS has this giant £1 billion bill. Second, the Treasury says, nope, no extra cash from us. So third, the NHS gets special permission to simply overspend its official budget for this year. But, and this is the all-important catch, it is not free money. The final step is the payback. That overspend will be clawed back from the NHS budget in the years to come. Now, it is really important to understand that these job cuts are not happening in a vacuum. They are actually just the first major step in a much bigger, long-term vision for completely reshaping the NHS. So let's look beyond the immediate cuts and see what that bigger picture looks like. And wow, this vision is pretty radical. The plan also calls for a massive 50% cut in headcount at the Regional Integrated Care Boards. Those are the ICBs, the local bodies that manage NHS services. The end goal is to turn the NHS into what they're calling a neighborhood health service. And probably the biggest structural shift of all, the plan is to abolish NHS England as its own separate entity and absorb it directly back into the Department of Health. This timeline really shows you the incredible pace of these changes. Right now, today, the funding for those 18,000 job cuts is approved. Very soon, the go-ahead will be given for those 50% cuts to the regional boards. And then, get this, within just 2 years, the plan is to have NHS England fully absorbed back into the Department of Health. That's a rapid and frankly radical restructuring. So, we've covered the what, the why, and the how. But what does any of this actually mean for you, as a taxpayer or as a patient? Let's connect the dots. So let's just quickly recap this whole proposal. First, you have the stated problem: unnecessary bureaucracy. The action taken is 18,000 job cuts, and the intended outcome is £1 billion in savings every year. Then you have the problem of high admin costs. The action is that very unique overspend, then payback funding mechanism, designed to free up cash. And finally, the problem of what's seen as an inefficient structure is kicking off this whole long-term restructuring. When you boil it all down, what you're left with is a massive calculated risk. The plan is to spend big right now, to take a significant short-term financial hit, all in the hope of achieving major long-term efficiency. And the ultimate goal is to get that money to where supporters say it matters most: patient care. And that leaves us with the big £1 billion question, doesn't it? It's the one that matters more than anything else, but it's the one we just don't have an answer to yet.
Will cutting thousands of administrative and managerial jobs actually lead to a more efficient service and ultimately better patient care on the ground?